called Another Reagan, Another America. The great writer William Shakespeare once said, "For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings," unquote. That's from Richard II. The recent passage of the 40th U.S. President, Ronald Wilson Reagan, into eternity has sparked a media frenzy, as well as a ruling class attempt at historical revisionism that repositions him as the virtual reincarnation of Lincoln. Lincoln was cast as the great emancipator, Reagan, the great communicator. There are many, however, both within and without the U.S., who have a far different view. They saw behind the actor to the screenwriters, who often toiled in the shadows of Wall Street, and who supported the former California governor from his earliest days when he began to betray his class. Reagan's ascension to the presidency came after a career of an FBI snitch when, as head of the Screen Actors Guild, he named names to the nefarious J. Edgar Hoover of those suspected of being Reds. His political career was built upon this foundation of betrayal of the class he was born into, his fellow workers in Hollywood, his former political party, and of those fellow Americans who had the misfortune of being born without silver spoons in their mouths. As California governor, he supported a vicious war against the Black Panther Party and the entire Black liberation movement to curry favor with the core of his political support, white nationalists. He sparked the deepening of the poisonous prison industrial complex that continues to ricochet across America. His allegiance to Wall Street and his antipathy against poor and working class Americans can best be seen in the economic policies that favored the former and beggared the latter, by the transfer of public monies from social programs to fund the military-industrial complex in a program to spin the former Soviets into the ground. This he did, but it also sent the U.S. economy into freefall. As scholars Francis Fox Piven and Richard Cloward noted in their classic The New Class War, Reagan's policies amounted to an attack on the welfare state, which sought to undermine labor and the poor to the benefit of the wealthy. Reagan launched incessant assaults on all sorts of social programs, for as Piven and Cloward explained, quote, "The income maintenance programs are coming under assault because they limit profits by enlarging the bargaining power of workers with employers," unquote. Reagan was indeed an actor whose performance attracted the support of people who voted against their own interests. But perhaps the greatest tragedy of the Reagan era may be the deep suffering of the poor and working people of Latin and Central America. There, Reagan unleashed a terrorist army of psychopaths who ravaged the nations of Nicaragua, of El Salvador, of Honduras, and beyond. Reagan, ever the actor, tried to paint the so-called contras as freedom fighters, whom he likened to our founding fathers. They were, in fact, mostly former members of the dreaded Guardia Nacional, the National Guard, the former Nicaraguan dictator Anastasio Somoza's henchmen, who were described by the Colombian diplomat Clara Nieto as, quote, "nothing more than gangs of terrorists and assassins," unquote. That's from her recent book, Masters of War. The Reagan administration, stung by critics, rushed to change the image of the contras and used the CIA to create a nicer-seeming contra movement. They unleashed a group that waged U.S.-supported atrocities against the country. This group, whom some have called the Key Biscayne Mafia, erected its own courts, its own prisons, its own torture chambers, and clandestine cemeteries where it buried those it executed, again according to Nieto. This U.S.-supported echo of our founding fathers threw corpses into the river and operated terror centers where Nieto writes, quote, "women were raped daily," unquote. To fund the contras, his administration broke the law. Their goal, according to Reagan, was to get the Nicaraguan government to say, unquote. There may be millions in the other America, the poor America, the black America, America Latina, who view the passing of the great communicator far differently than that reflected in the media. But they are invisible. From Death Row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are produced by Noel